Welcome, everybody, to Let's Talk About It. A podcast is a platform for real talk, real people, real topics, real conversations. First and foremost, everybody watching me on YouTube today, I would like to thank you. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, hit that notification button. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love this episode today. For people listening to me on Apple, iHeart, or Spotify, please hit the notification button, give a like, give a subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a young man on today. I saw we have a mutual friend named Donnie. Donnie purchased his book, and I was very interested about this book. But he has three of them. This is the Polish Trilogy. It's a collection of experiences that reveal how to overcome adversity. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, we've all been through adversity. This man has three books. Let me see if I'm pronouncing this right. Relentless Chapters, Preparing for What's Next, and A Young Professional's Guide for Success. Also, ladies and gentlemen, he is from my hometown, Philly, which is the two-time Super Bowl winning champions. My man, I'd like to introduce everybody to Calvin PURNELL Jr. Calvin, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, Lou. Thank you for having me on today. I definitely appreciate this opportunity and looking forward to having this great conversation with you.
Yes, we're going to have a great conversation, as you know. And also, we're both from Philly, two-time Super Bowl winning champions. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Go Birds. Go Birds.
Calvin, you are author of a trilogy about overcoming adversity and other journeys. Three books, sir. Three books. I'm very impressed by that. First and foremost, before we get into your journey to go to how you wrote your three books, when did you start having the idea of even having in your thought about being a writer? Like, did you do it at an early age? Is something you've always wanted to do? Like, when did that start for you?
It started probably in, I would have to say 1997, 1998. I was just journaling, just putting thoughts down on paper, writing short stories, just getting my ideas out. So it started then. I didn't really think about writing a book until someone read some of my journals and was like, "You are a good storyteller. You should probably consider writing a book." So that's pretty much how it started. Then I ended up started writing a very worldly book back in, I guess that was about 2000, 2001 time frame. And that was like an off and on project. I didn't take it serious. I did finish it. I did not publish it though. So I had some spiritual shifts in my life that said, you know what, put this book down. This isn't the direction that you're going in your life anymore. So I actually sat the book down in about 2006 and did nothing with it. It's still sitting in a bin in my garage at this point. But that's where my writing journey kind of started for me.
Okay. Do you still have those like journals and like maybe you wrote them on a piece of paper? Do you still have them?
I do, yes. They are packed away in a bin in the garage. I still have them.
Wow, I love that right there. So let's get into your first book. I'm assuming it is the Relentless Chapters.
Polished Young Professional's Guide for Success is the first book.
That is the first book.
Yes.
So let's get into, when was the moment, or take me back to the journey to where you got to write your first book? Because I know it was a very long journey, but the way I understand, writing a book is not as easy as everybody thinks it is. So let's start off with that beginning point up to that book there.
Okay, sure. So it actually started for me back in 2013. I started working for this company. It was called Fiberlink Communications at the time. And working for them, I realized I was the oldest person on the team. And I realized I was the oldest person on the team. And spiritually, God said to me, Calvin, now's the time to write the book. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, what book? Had no idea what direction to go in that space. So God said the book on mentorship. And as I started getting, the divine download from the spiritual perspective, God was giving me the guidance on the topics to cover. So basically it was the situation where I had to look at my life based on my experience, because at that point I was about, I want to say I was close to about 20 years into my professional career in information technology. And, going through, like I said, like you mentioned, the book, it covers you dealing with adversity, but I had that real life experience in technology. And, working for that company, like I said, realizing I was the oldest person on the team, recognizing some of the individuals that were younger than me didn't seem to have mentors from what it looked like. So God telling me now's the time to write the book, saying, okay, the book on mentorship, taking a look at my past and my career, some of the things that I've gone through, lessons learned, things I learned from my mentors, things that I learned along the way as I was developing my career. And I just really just asked God to guide me through that process. And, it was a step-by-step process on writing that book. It wasn't easy, but it started in 2013, and I published it and had the first physical copy in my hand late March of 2016, and we launched it on April 1st of 2016.
Okay. All right. So let's go back a little bit. So I'm assuming, right, what made you get into your profession in the first place? I'm assuming you went to college for that, right?
I did not. So I went to a
Oh,
technical trade school. Yes, I
okay.
went to this will probably ring a bell for you.
Okay.
Computer Learning Center back in
Okay.
the day. Yeah,
Wow.
so we're talking years ago. So
Wow. I remember that, man. I see the
yeah,
signs all over the place on 95 and all that
yeah.
stuff like that. I just see it all over the place. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started that 3 days after I graduated high school in 1994. And
Okay.
from that point, I had opportunities to go to college, but I just personally, I wasn't ready for college. I felt like I was a little immature. I had some great opportunities. I had some scholarships that were given to me, but I just didn't go that route because mentally I just wasn't ready. I thought I would have blew the scholarships, knowing that my parents didn't have money to pay for my college tuition. I felt as though it was better for me to go to a technical trade school. So the idea of going to a technical trade school and getting into information technology started for me back when I was 9 years old, driving down the highway with my dad. He was
Really?
telling me about a friend of his back then who was making like $100 an hour being flown all over the world fixing computers for companies. So when I
Wow.
was 18, 9 years after that conversation, after I told my parents I wasn't going to attend college, they told me, well, you can't work at McDonald's the rest of your life. You need to figure it out. So I went to my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed, turned my TV on, and this Computer Learning Center commercial came on. And I reflected on that conversation that I had with my dad 9 years prior and said, you know what? If that guy was making $100 an hour back then, what could I make now at that point? So I enrolled, I applied, I took the exam, passed the exam with flying colors to the point where the administrator didn't want me to go there. They said, you should probably go to college instead. So
Okay.
had me bring my parents down and have a conversation with them. They were like, you know what? This isn't something that he wants to do. He wants to come here
Yeah.
to get the opportunity and get involved in technology versus going to college and blowing a scholarship. So my parents knew my story. I shared the story with the admin and they just basically reiterated. I was 18, so I was able to make that decision on my own and, learned a valuable lesson about time as well. So they asked me, okay, so when do you want to start? So I said, well, I graduate June 20 something. I couldn't remember the exact date. I can't
Yeah.
remember the exact date.
Okay.
And she was like, well, we have a class that's starting 3 days after you graduate. You can start then. And I
Wow.
was like, well, that's too soon. So she says, well, when do you want to start? I said, well, give me about 6 months. Let me come back at the beginning of the year. We're talking 1995. I started January 1995. And she taught me the most valuable lesson on time that I've ever been taught in my life. And it taught me how to respect time even more. So she says, listen, if you say you're going to start in January of 1995, I
Yeah.
can guarantee you will not show up.
Really?
And so I was like, wow, okay, I know I'm going to show up, but okay, if you say that, tell me more, talk to me more. So she says, okay, if you start the classes starting at the end of June, 3 days after you graduate, think about it like this. By the time January of 1995 comes, you would have 6 months completed already, which is almost half of the 15-month course that you're going to be taking. So that was a wake up call for me. So if I said to myself, okay, start in June, the end of June. By the time January comes, I have 15 months, I have 6 months completed, which means at this point, I only have another 9 months to go versus having to start in January of 1995 and have to complete an entire 15 months from that point. So I
Wow.
said, you know what? I'll start 3 days after I graduate. And I'm glad I did because it put me in the front of a lot of opportunities that came my way where I might not have had those same opportunities had I started in January of 1995 and would not have finished until March, April of 1996. So
Wow.
if we think about it, if I think about it like that, she taught me the most valuable lesson of time that I've ever been taught before is make sure you respect time and think about it from a big picture perspective of if I start now versus starting later, how much could I actually complete between now and then? So that's where I learned how to respect time.
I'll tell you right now, Calvin, it seemed like, at 18 years old, your maturity level was up there, even at
Yeah,
18.
it was pretty high. It was pretty high, but I had a friend who was at Drexel. I had a scholarship to go to Drexel, and a friend of mine who was there a year ahead of me had an off-campus apartment. And he was like, "Yeah, I heard you're coming to Drexel," and I was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." And he says, "Well, man, how about your dad? My dad split the rent on the apartment I have," and he started talking about having parties, girls coming in and out, and all that. And I was just like, "Yeah, man, I'm going to be here on a scholarship. I'm going to blow it." So I just knew that I couldn't take that chance. And I didn't risk it. It wasn't worth it to me. So going the route that I did, it worked out in my favor, and I believe that was the route that I was supposed to go.
I'll tell you right now, if I can remember, I know Drexel is one of the top engineering schools in the country.
Yep.
And technology schools in the country. Now, before you wrote this book, when you went to your first job, the Young Professor's Guide for Success, can you give like a little bit, like maybe like three little things like that you could tell the audience about that book particularly, like three little things?
Absolutely. So it talks to you about how to find a mentor and the importance of mentorship and, what you should do as a mentee. And not only that, once you've gained the experience and education from your mentor that you've been working with, it's very important to reach your hands back and pull more people ahead. So it has the pay it forward method in there. So that's one piece. The other piece is how to conduct yourself in organizations. A lot of times people who coming fresh out of college, they may not have had internships. They may not have had mentors who talk to them and teach them how to conduct themselves in a workplace. Those are some other areas of topics that I bring forth in there, as well as how you dress when you go to organizations. So it's important to understand the corporate culture for the organizations that you work for, whether they say, "Hey, we want you to come to work in business attire, business casual," or if they say, "Come in your street clothes," we're fine with that. Just making sure you understand that and you represent yourself as best as you can in each of those environments. So those are some of the topics that I talk about.
Now, before I ask you about your profession leading you up to write this book, first of all, right, your upbringing, your parents. It sounds like you had two great parents that are very supportive to you. How important was your parents' guidance throughout your first years at your first job, leading up to your first book?
Well, it was very important, just watching my mom and dad and, even my step parents at the time as well, go to work every day. And, they get up every morning, they go to work, they talk about their jobs when they come home. They spoke about, some of the things that they were dealing with. So there were some times that I paid attention to what they were talking about. There were other times that I didn't. And,
Yeah.
but they were my parents made sure that they helped us as our children. I'm one of three. They helped us prepare for work, the working environment. So very important for me, and valuable information that my parents have shared with me. I think one of my chapters in the first book is talking about my parents and what they've taught me throughout that time, and then leading up to my first job. My parents, they gave me a lot of guidance and taught me how to be prepared to work in certain environments as well.
You know what, parents, man, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I wish I had that when I was growing up, especially 18. I mean, good Lord, like, growing up to where I grew up at, you're very lucky. I'm very blessed that I hear that from you. A lot of people don't have those type of parents, but you
Yeah.
did. You did. Yeah, I'm very, very happy for you. Um,
Thank you.
when you first decided to write this book, after everything you went through in your career in the first beginning, what was that pivotal moment where you say, you know what, I'm gonna write this down. I'm going to write a book or even create it, maybe like a blog or a journal or something like that. But that came out to your book. What was that pivotal moment where you said, I'm going to write this and put all my experiences into this book to help other people?
It was, I can't remember if it was me sitting at work that on a particular day, or if it was I was coming home from work and it was revealed to me that this is what I needed to do. But when it did come to me, I automatically did everything I needed to do. I had a laptop. I didn't start writing it out with pen and paper. I started it out on my laptop. I started writing on my laptop and just try to figure out what the process would look like. And then I just went into prayer. And I just asked God, I said, God, you gave me this project. I need you to help me and guide me through it step by step. And I really had to close off like all of the outside noise and learn how to tell people no, as well as
Mhm.
telling myself no, because
Yeah.
I knew this journey that I was going on was very important, something that I had to do. It wasn't something that I could say, all right, I'm going to do it and I'm going to start it now. And I'll put it down for a few years and I'll come back to it. I knew this was something that I had to continuously work on, and from the start point to the end point. So I was in spaces where, if I got ideas, I told myself, okay, if I'm at work, all right, this particular idea that I know I want to put into the book. If I told myself, hey, you'll, remember this when you get home and make sure you write it down, guess what? I
Yeah.
forgot. So I transitioned from writing my first book from my laptop to my iPad, and I would carry my iPad everywhere I went. So whenever I got an idea, I would jot down that idea in the iPad, and then I say, okay, so at least that way, when I get home, I can remember what the idea was, and then I can elaborate on it from that point. But it's been a journey. Again, just going back to learning how to tell people no and tell myself no, because at that point I was 37, 38 years old,
Mhm.
and still relatively young, still like loving to hang out after work and,
Yeah.
do things with my wife and, and so forth and friends and everything. But I knew I had to continue this work. So there were moments where people would call and say, hey, let's go hang out. And I would have to tell them, no, can't.
Yeah.
They would say, why? I'm like, because I'm writing my book. There were moments where my wife would say, hey, let's go out to dinner or let's go do this. I had to tell her no, because I need to focus on writing this book. There were moments when I had to tell myself no, that I can't go out and have the fun that I want to have, because I really had to be focused on writing this book. Because again, this wasn't for me, right? If it was something for me, I could have put it off to the back burner and said, I'll get back to it
Absolutely.
when I want to. But knowing that this was going to impact lives that are far greater than me and will impact lives well after I'm gone,
Mhm.
I had to continue with the process. So it was a real journey, and it wasn't hard to tell people no, because like I said, this was bigger than me, and it still is. So
Okay. Now, what was the average time of writing all three books, especially the first one?
okay, first one was about 3 years. So I started it in 2013, submitted it to the publisher at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Had the first physical copy in my hand late March of 2016. So it was about 3 years.
Okay. Have you ever sat there? Have you ever had what they call, I guess, you probably know more about this than me, writer's block?
Absolutely.
And if you had it, how'd you get through that? And also, I gotta add, did you have it either any three books? Was the first book? How'd you get through each one of them? Because I heard that's a big deal.
It is. So writer's block is a real thing. And I tried to overcome it. That's something that you can't force yourself to do. So when I was in spaces where I had writer's block, by me trying to overcome it, I would still write anyway. And then when I would go back and read what I wrote during the times that I had writer's block, I'm like, man, this is garbage. I need to delete it because it didn't make sense. So there were
Oh,
paragraphs and pages that I've written during those phases of writer's block that just didn't fit with the book. So
wow.
having to delete the stuff and say, you know what, I'm going to respect writer's block, and I'm going to allow myself to take this time to take a break so I can recharge and then go back into it when the time was right. So yeah, so it happens. It happened with all three books. So yeah,
You know what? Since you say that, right? Mentally, like it's a lot of mental issues out there in this country and the rest around the world. And I can imagine how mentally draining that was writing a book, especially all your experiences into it. Did that have a affected you mentally at times, especially writing your first one?
absolutely. It absolutely did. Um, because at that point, it was, in the process of writing a book and trying to recall past experiences, lessons learned. Um, it wears you down, right? So it's like physical exercise. So physical exercise will wear you down. Your mental, when you're using your brain, you're mentally exercising your brain. So that wears you down even more. It wears you down far more than the physical does, right? Because at this point, if you can't function with your cognitive thoughts and get your brain together, nothing else will work. Um, so I've spent 5 years in anger management therapy. And during that time, my therapist taught me about mindfulness and awareness practices.
Yeah.
So whenever I had those moments where I was mentally unable to perform, I would just put myself in a space where I said, let me practice my breathing. Let me focus on meditation. Let me get myself back, because those are the things that calms your brain down. And it gives you opportunity to reduce the stress, because really what's happening is when you're mentally gone, like when your mental is like just taking over and you can't function, it's stress. So you get a lot of fog that just wraps around your amygdala. So when you start to breathe properly, get that clean oxygen pushed to your brain, it starts to reduce the fog that's around your amygdala and gives you opportunity to be able to function again.
I love the explanation. Now, before we get to your second book, when everything was said and done, you got it done, you went to your publisher, you sat down, like, okay, I got everything done. And then when you seen it, the finished copy, when you first got in your hands, or matter of fact, take me to the point where you seen it in the store, where you seen it online, where you had it in your hands. Walk me through that feeling right there. That has to be a good feeling.
Absolutely. So when I first saw it, it was the first physical copy. So, working with the let me do this. Let me start here. Working with the publisher, you're going back and forth, approving, your cover, making sure that everything on the inside is configured and properly set inside of the book, and making sure that the cover and everything is designed the way that you want it to be done. Seeing it that way was exciting. But getting that first physical copy in the mail saying, Calvin, this is your first physical copy of the book. We want you to go through inside and out and make sure you agree to every piece of content that's in here. Make sure the typeset is in the right place. Make sure the cover is designed the way that you want it to be designed, the front and the back. So when I got that first physical copy in the mail, I had to drop to my knees and just thank God and say, Lord, thank you for allowing me to write this book. And just being able to get it done, because
nice.
that was something that was and I hate to say this like this, but it's just the truth. It's like giving birth to a baby. As far as I'm not a woman, I've never given birth, but I've seen my children born. But when you have something that you create and you see it come to life and you're actually able to hold it in your hands, it's like, wow, like unbelievable, right? So at that point, I look at it like, this is my legacy for my family, right? So that's what it really boiled down to me as. So, holding my children in my arms when they were born, nothing compares to that. Not saying that my book is the same as that, but the way that I look at it from a long-term perspective, the books are legacy for my family, to the point where when I'm gone, they're still going to get the residuals and the payments and so forth from the royalties from my books that are being sold. So, and that's going to continue, right? So having that opportunity was just like, wow, I cannot believe I did this. And then just to throw, not to throw a monkey wrench in it, but just to throw a little curveball at you. You really can't let anybody tell you can't do anything, right? So when I take a step back and look at my life, the fact that overcoming adversity, just to tie it back in, the books for me personally, I wrote those because it was helping me overcome adversity that I dealt with. So I'm a convicted felon as well. So having to deal with that and writing a book, getting my career back on track, then writing the book, and then having that first physical copy in my hands, just like, there's nothing that can stop me.
Exactly.
Only thing that can stop me is me, right? People can get in my way and tell me no, but guess what? I'm gonna move them out of the way and go towards the next person that could possibly help me, and that's the way that it goes. So yeah, it's phenomenal. It's a great feeling.
I bet it is, man. Trust me, you've overcome so much to get to this book. I'm telling you. So so everything's done, you got it in your hand. What was the next step to writing the second book? I'm assuming that's preparing for what's next.
Yep.
All right. So walk me through, like, okay, this is out. How long was the book out before you started in your head preparing for what's next?
I was actually preparing for what's next the same time I was writing Polished, a Young Professional's Guide for Success. Okay. So my mindset around it was when I wrote the first book, the first manuscript, it was too long. So I was reading through it and I was saying to myself, young people are not going to want to read a 300-page book on professional and personal development. Like, they're just not. So I said, okay, let me figure out a way of breaking this down. So some of the content that I had inside of A Young Professional's Guide for Success were was put into preparing for what's next, because preparing for what's next helps you focus on your next steps in your career. So if you're 3 to 5 years into your career, if you're 5 to 10 years into your career and you're saying, hey, I want to do something different, that's what preparing for what's next is about. It's about getting you to that next stage in your career and in life. It's not just about career focus as well. But yeah, so even during that time, I would say that I really started focusing in on preparing for what's next in early 2016, as the publisher had the first manuscript, A Young Professional's Guide for Success. So I started writing that then. And then I ended up having that published in 2019. So late 2019 is when it came out.
So give us like a little snippet of the second book.
Sure. So the second book, like I said, is definitely designed towards helping you figure out what your next steps are going to look like. So 3 points that it covers. Understanding that, yes, I have mentors that have been working with me in my career. How can I use them going forward? Because when you're working with mentors, they help you navigate the goals and help you help you understand their successes, their failures, those in between moments when they felt like giving up. That helps you move towards your next steps and accomplishing that next goal. So preparing for what's next will help you dive deeper into the mentorship portion of it, and then also the goals that you set for yourself. It helps you make them come to life. It also talks about, another point that it talks about is focusing on, understanding the education, right? So I find that it's important to continue to have continuous education. You can't go to your next role if you're not educated. So what I've learned is it's important to take at least about 5% of your salary and dedicate that towards your education and your personal and professional development. And that's something, that
I've never heard that before. That's something very new.
Yeah.
Break that down right there. I'm interested in that.
Sure. So, a lot of times, right? So we think about it, you're in a career. Now I'll break it down a little bit further. So as a teenager, I worked at McDonald's. I knew working at McDonald's, that was just a stepping stone for me. It was something for me to get money. But I knew working at McDonald's, I wanted to do something a little bit more than just being someone who worked the register, someone who worked on the grill. I knew I wanted to say at some point become a manager. So I started watching the managers, how they operated, what they did. So then I started saying, okay, if this is what they're doing on a regular basis on leading teams and leading the crew that's on staff there, what is it that I need to do that same thing? So it helped me elevate. So I watched and paid attention to them. I didn't have to pay anything towards that, but this is just a layman's terms way of bringing it to life. But then I'll talk about the 5% piece of your salary as well. So becoming a manager at McDonald's helped elevate me, and it gave me opportunity to have foresight and see big pictures as well for when it comes to me developing in my career. So I get in my career, I start working, and I'm just taking advantage of opportunities that's in front of me, learning from my colleagues that are there. But then I get further into my career and I start thinking, okay, I do want to do bigger and better things. I want to lead teams. I want to own products. I want to create content. What do I need to do? I need to get education. So I have to start figuring out what are those next steps for me, whether I want to get certifications, whether I want to get a degree. I have to put some of my finances, some of my salary towards that. So understanding what that looks like for anybody is just really understanding your path. Where are you going? So if you figure out the direction that you need to go in to elevate yourself, is it going to take a degree? Is it going to take a certification? Or is it just going to take some additional classes? So if you have those opportunities in front of you and you want to elevate, you're going to have to pay for it. Sometimes your companies will pay for it as well. But if it's not along the same lines and path that you are on and the journey that you're on at the company that you work for, you may have to come out of your pocket and pay for it out of your own pocket. So I did some research and found that they say that it is best to put at least 5% of your income towards your education throughout the years when you want to elevate. And I found it to be true. I paid for my own education to continuously get certifications and so forth. And it makes a big difference because having those certifications helped get me positions that I probably wouldn't have gotten had I not had those certifications and that education.
Bro, wow. Before we get to your third one, what's the most difficult part of writing a book?
To me, the most difficult part is being patient with yourself.
Mm.
You have to be patient with yourself because as a writer and someone who has actually produced books, you probably think that it should happen overnight. Well, it doesn't, right? You think that, oh, if I can write at least a chapter a day, I can have this book done in no time. And some people can do it depending on their lifestyle, right? I'm not going to sit here and say it can't be done. Some
Yeah.
people can do it. But to me, it's just having the patience. I feel like that's the biggest obstacle that I've ever gone through for myself. I had people come to me on a regular basis and ask me to give them the secret sauce of writing a book. And I'm like, there isn't one. I know there are some people who they create outlines when they're writing their book before they start to write their book. I don't. I just figure out, okay, for me, I go into prayer, number one, and ask God, okay, this is what you gave me. How should I structure this book? What topics do you want me to bring forth? So from that point, I figure out what the chapter titles are going to be inside of the book. And then I start writing those chapters as it comes to me, as the information comes to me that needs to be produced in it. But it's just patience is the biggest thing. And the best advice I can give anybody who wants to write a book is to be patient with yourself and don't wait until you think that it's the perfect time, because there is no perfect time. If you have paper and pen, start writing. If you have a computer, use that. Just start writing. That's the biggest piece.
Yeah. Before we get to the third book, when you got the second book in hand, how was that moment? So you got two books. You got one there. You get a second one. Like, okay, I got two books here. Published writer, published author. I got two books. How'd that feel?
Felt great. It's like I did it again. I'm not a one-hit wonder. It was a wow moment again. I knew I wasn't done. I knew the second book wasn't going to be the end of this project, but it was, again, I birthed another child. I gave birth to something that I actually started writing, and I committed myself to it, and I was able to get it done. It was just, again, a wow moment.
What made you get into the last one, the Relentless Chapters?
The Resilience Chapters.
I'm not the best at pronunciation, bro.
That's no problem. Yeah, no worries. The Resilience Chapters. So it's interesting because the third book in the Polish Trilogy was supposed to be a book on leadership. And I was writing that book until 2021. And 2021 happened. There were some transitions that happened. And this is probably the second time somebody's asked me this question about why the Resilience Chapter. So breaking it down, I was in this transition period of trying to figure out, am I knowledgeable enough to write a book on leadership, being as though that at that point I was 26 years into my career.
Yeah.
And I've held some leadership positions, but they haven't been top tier leadership positions. I've led teams, I've built teams, but I haven't hit like an upper echelon in the leadership scale when it comes to careers. So I felt as though, you know what, let me put this down. So I actually put it down. And then early 2021, I was leading an engineering team at IBM. And I was actually in the process of transitioning out of that leadership role to move into a different position in HR under diversity and inclusion. And I was in a conversation with one of my team members, because during that time, January of 2021, that engineering team that I was managing and leading was told that they are being relocated to Austin, Texas from Philadelphia. And I was just, like, wow, like perfect timing for me, because I'm transitioning out of this role anyway. Terrible timing for my team because we're still in COVID. And, they're like, people were like, well, they want us to move. Like, what's going to happen? So they were given options. They said, you can either take the relocation package and move to Austin and still have your job, or you can look for another position inside of the company that will allow you to stay in the Philadelphia area, or you can resign 60 days from this date.
Whoa.
And they offered them a severance package as well. So I was actually talking to one of my engineers. His name is Kenny. And, he and I were just in conversation, just hashing it out. And I had this same meeting with all of my engineers because I wanted to help them make the best decision for themselves and their families as they were figuring out, am I going to relocate? Am I going to find a new position, or am I going to resign and look for another role outside of the company? So as I'm having a conversation with Kenny, I'm sharing with him a situation that happened in my career. So another flashback for you is Core States Bank. So
whoa, that's an old name. Whoa, that's an old name.
yeah. So I was working for Core States Bank in 1997. I started working for them. I think it was like November of 1997.
Yeah.
And maybe about 3 days after being there, they announced that First Union was going to acquire them. So I'm at that point, I'm almost 4 years into my career, not knowing what an acquisition was. Like, what the heck is an acquisition? I'm only like, at that point, I was 22, 23 years old. Never heard about a company acquiring another company. I just didn't pay attention to that kind of stuff on the news when they talked about it, because they did. But yeah, so they brought us into this large conference room, ballroom, I should say, all the employees who were in Philadelphia. And they announced, they said, hey, this is what's happening. First Union is acquiring Core States Bank, and they just gave us the ins and outs as much as they can give us. So they took some questions. Then there was a gentleman who asked a question and said, so is my job safe today? Am I still going to have my job, is what the question was. And the answer came back saying, today, you still have your job. Yes. So everybody took that as a sigh of relief. Okay, great. But then as we're leaving that ballroom, I heard someone saying to the gentleman who asked the question, but what about tomorrow? Am I still going to have my job tomorrow?
He said today, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was the first time that I had to deal with an acquisition. And then also the first time that I had to deal with a relocation, because the team that I was on, they asked us to relocate to Charlotte, North Carolina. And they gave us options. They said, you can relocate to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we'll pay for that. Then they also said you could either find a new position in the new business that'll keep you here in Philadelphia, and they said, or you can resign and we'll give you a severance package as well as pay for your education. And because I didn't take the severance package, I ended up finding a new position inside of First Union. But I was talking to Kenny about my experience there as having to deal with the relocation and the lessons that I learned. And then we started talking about a few other different topics. And then I said to Kenny, I said, you know what? I need to write a book about being resilient. and he said, you absolutely do. So I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write Polish the Resilience Chapters. And that's how this book came to play. So having that conversation with Kenny gave birth to Polish the Resilience Chapters, and also helped me pull information out from my 30 years of experience in my career, and helped me in the toolkit that I built for myself in my career that helps me understand corporate conversations, corporate language, the way organizations move when it comes to acquisitions and mergers, and when it comes to relocations, when it comes to layoffs. I had to learn all of that and package that into a toolkit for myself. So that way, when I see and start to hear these things happen in the organization, I know to start preparing myself for, let me start looking for something else, or let me start to network so that way I may not be impacted by these situations that are coming. Right. So those are the topics that I bring forth in this book, Polish the Resilience Chapters.
Bruh, this is amazing. I love this, man. Right. But before we wind this one down, I got a couple things I got to ask you before we end it off with my little 5-question game for you to end. We have a little fun with it at the end.
Okay.
You know what? What was the most surprising thing you learned while writing all your books?
I think the most surprising thing that I learned is I wasn't as smart as I thought I was.
Really?
Yeah.
You sure? You sound smart as hell to me.
Yeah, it taught me a lot, because writing these books, it taught me a lot. It definitely taught me a lot writing this trilogy. And then, I guess another thing that was really surprising to me is the act of faith, of having faith, right? And making sure that you continuously work on your faith, because we can get derailed by not having faith a lot, based on what we see around us and what we hear. Right. Yeah. So the fact that I had the faith to see from the beginning, middle, and end on all 3 books, and actually make all 3 come to life, faith has been, is to me, having faith always surprises me, because you just never know what your outcomes are going to be. But if you're faithful to whatever it is that you're set out to accomplish, it'll get done. And no matter what, like, no matter how much time it takes to get done, it'll get done. Because literally, I thought I was going to have this book done in 3 years. I didn't. I started in January 2021. I published it, came out in April 1st of 2025. So we're talking 4 years, a little over 4 years at this point. But it's still having that faith that it can get done and knowing that it will get done and believing God that God is going to give me the strength and wherewithal to get through it. Because I'll tell you this, I've also experienced just being recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. So I was dealing with that. I started having those symptoms back in January of 2024. I woke up in the middle of the night. It was January 27th. I woke up around 3 a.m. I'm sorry, it's January 25th. Woke up 3 a.m. and I saw double, like saw two televisions in my bedroom. And I was like, what the heck is going on?
Really?
So, yeah. So that happened. And I've gone through like a bunch of different tests and, the symptoms progressed where it was seeing double intermittently to it was seeing double all the time to the point where I was losing my balance, completely lost like a lot of muscle mass and the ability to use my muscles at certain times and being completely fatigued. And it was a lot, man. It was a lot. I had to stop driving for quite a few months.
Wow.
It was a lot, but having the faith to get through it, and understanding like let me keep my faith and try to figure out what it is that God is trying to show me and teach me in this time. And from January, I would say February of 2024 until actually getting diagnosed in late September of 2024. It was a whirlwind, like so many exams, so many tests that I had to get to the point where I was hoping that when I got the MRI on my brain that they were going to come back and tell me that I had an aneurysm. I was hoping because I just wanted to know because every test that I took came back negative.
Wow.
It took, and this is in the third book, a picture of it. It took having to get a needle just directly under my eye to test the nerves and how my muscles would react to the nerves. It took that exam in order for me to be diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. So talk about being resilient.
Yes. Yes. That book covers everything, brother. Everything.
Yeah.
Bro, I mean, how you feeling now? You good?
I'm good. I still have symptoms here and there. I'm still working out 3 days a week and, try to, because here's the thing, I'm not going to let this thing define me, right? That's my number one goal, not letting it define me. I'm on a support group every Tuesday night with people who have this same autoimmune disease, and what they experience versus what I experience is far greater. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed. And I just thank God every single day that I don't have what I could possibly have. Right. And I do pray for the people who are on that support call that things get better for them, even though we have to live with this for the rest of our lives. I just pray that they all get to a point where they can be in remission. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot that goes on. And just for the audience, for everybody who's listening and watching, never judge a book by its cover because you don't know what people are going through. You have no clue what people are going through.
Yes.
You have no clue.
Yes. I appreciate that so much, sir. I appreciate so much. Right. But before we wrap things up, I'm going to play my little 5-question game with you. And also, I'm going to give you the last word to the audience. Well, you ready to play with me, sir?
Absolutely. Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun here. Number one, what is one thing people misunderstand or misunderstood about you?
I'm not as mean as I look. I think that's something that people misunderstand because I kind of have, being from Philly, and I'm not going to say everybody from Philly is like this. I don't smile a lot. I'm putting myself.
That's the truth, bro. I'm sorry. That's the truth, man. Trust me. That's the truth.
Yeah. I'm learning. Yeah. I'm learning how to smile a lot more. And be in those moments of joy. But yeah, I think that's something that people misunderstand about me, that I'm not as mean as I look. I am an approachable person. I am a very nice person. I'm always willing to help people out when I can.
You got to tell Donnie that too, man.
Yeah. I will.
All right. I got another one for you. This should be a good one for you. If past you could see present you now, what would they say?
knew it. I knew you could get there. That's exactly what past me would say. Because this is so funny. I have a shirt that says the old me versus the new me. And I'm sorry, it says the new me versus the old me. So yeah, everybody has different parts of their lives, right? So growing up, well, I wouldn't say growing up. When I would say I was in my 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, I had one foot in the street, one foot in corporate America. And my old heads used to tell me all the time, like, yo, stop, just stop. You either pick one or the other and figure it out. But we want you to pick the corporate side. So, but being rebellious, I always wanted to, I wanted to toe the line. And one thing led to another. But I think old me would definitely say I knew it. I knew you would be the person that you are today. And continue down that path, because one thing that I've learned is it's easy to cross back over, right? Because like I mentioned before, I spent 5 years in anger management therapy, and one thing my therapist taught me was the anger never leaves you. You just learn how to manage it. That's why it's called anger management.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's so true, because had I not gone to anger management, I probably would have been incarcerated again, losing my temper again and doing who knows what. So yeah, I'll end on that.
You got to smile more, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't take things as serious as I used to. That's for sure.
Well, I got one for you. I ask everybody this, and it always brings back memories. Some people do. Some people can remember. Some people can't. What was your favorite toy as a kid?
Legos and Lincoln Logs.
Yo, you're the third person who said Lincoln Logs. Yo, what is it about Lincoln Logs, man? I understand that.
Yeah, and you could only do but so much with Lincoln Logs, But it was just fun, just building houses and building log cabins with the Lincoln Logs. But the Legos, you can produce a lot, and that's part of the reason why I had I had the scholarship to Drexel for the engineering program. My mom always said she wanted me to be an engineer, and that my parents always put Legos and Lincoln Logs in front of me. And then as time evolved, there were other things they put in front of me to start to put together and build and construct. So yeah,
I love that. I love that. All right, here goes something for you. If you could learn one skill instantly, what would it be?
I would say speak Spanish and speak Japanese. Those are the two languages that I would love to learn and speak fluently.
Especially with all the technology. You go to Japan, man, you can have man, you learn everything over there.
Yeah.
All right, last question, sir. If you can ask your future self one question, what question would that be?
Too many questions I would ask my future self. I got to narrow it down to one.
One question.
This is so crazy because I would say, how far in the future are we talking?
Let's say 5 years.
All right, so that's not far enough. But okay, so 5 years from now, I guess I would ask my future self, how well is my speaking career going?
That's a good one right there. See, there you go. Well, Cal, I'll tell you, I loved everything you said today, man. But if you can give a last message to people, I know you said it earlier, because some people on here is going to watch will have a couple questions. Like, give like an inspiration to someone who wants to be a first-time writer, and plus how to go about to get their book published or something like that. A lot of people don't know how to do that as well. They can write a lot of stuff, but a lot of people don't explain, like, not a long version, but like, kind of like a little short version. What's the steps to get to that point, and give your final message for that?
Okay. Yeah. So I would say, for aspiring writers, continuously write. I write every day. Even whether it's a sentence or paragraphs, I write something every day. And I do that to keep myself fresh. I do that because I want to see what my thoughts look like on paper. And I on my, if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I have like these little post-it notes that I put up, and I don't do it every single day, but I do it most of the time. You'll see that was my thought that I woke up to that morning, whatever that post-it note is. So write every day, regardless of what it is. Get your thoughts down, and get to the point where you exercise that muscle, because you don't want to lose it. It's a skill that, in my opinion, it's like riding a bike. You'll never lose it. Just like boxing, you'll never lose those skills. Writing is the same way. If that's something that you truly feel that is your heart's desire, write every single day. And never give up. Like, just continuously work on that. When it comes to the publishing portion of it, it's not as difficult as you think it is. I self-published all 3 of my books, and I worked with a publishing company. And what you will realize is, when you start to look for publishing companies to do a self-published process with your book, a lot of the larger organizations, a lot of the larger publishing houses have subsidiaries underneath of them that help with the self-publishing. So Hay House Publishing is a large conglomerate publishing house. I use Balboa Press, who is under Hay House Publishing. And, they have different packages, and Hay House isn't the only one. You have Simon and Schuster, you have, I can't remember the other ones, but they're all of the large publishing houses. They all have them. So you figure out which direction you think best fits you, and then find that company and work with them. If you self-publish, if you don't get a literary agent to help you shop your manuscript around, self-publish it, figure out which package is the best package, because they do offer different packages. You can purchase that package. All rights that will be reserved to you when you publish your book. It's going to be copywritten under your name. So if you decide to pick up your book and move it to another publishing house, you can do that without any problems. You won't have any legal issues. But just get it done. People need to hear your voice. People need to read what you have to say. And you never know who you're helping. Just like I mentioned, these 3 books that I put together, I didn't do it for me. I did it for you, for whoever's listening, and for whoever's reading it, and whoever's going to read it. The other thing that I would say is, just keep pushing yourself. And my biggest message that I always give everyone after I have public speaking events is what's on my shirt. It says, "You cannot give up on yourself."
I love it. I love it.
Just the backstory on that: when I was incarcerated, I was in prayer, and I was before I had to turn myself in to serve my time. And I was saying to God, "Lord, I want to go back to the National Park Service." And at that time, Fox 29 News here in Philadelphia would be on the Camden waterfront, and they would shoot over the Penn's Landing area, and you would see the Customs House, the U.S. Customs House down in Old City on 2nd and Chestnut. And that was where I worked. I worked in that building, and I said, "Lord, I just want to work in that building again." And God said to me clear as day, "You cannot give up on yourself." I use that as my tagline. I have it on wristbands that I give away when I go to speaking engagements. I have it on my T-shirt. I live by that every single day. So no matter what it is that you are looking to accomplish in life, whether it's to be a writer, whether it's to be some form of a professional, whether it's, you want to start your own business, whether, you want to be a great parent, just remember, you cannot give up on yourself, because someone is counting on you. Because what I learned is, we are not living our lives for ourselves. We're living our lives for other people. We are living testimonies. And the way we walk, people are watching us, and they watch what we're going to do next, because we don't know if they're hanging on a thread back there trying to figure out what their next step is going to be. And they're looking at you trying to figure out, what is this person going to do? Because I admire that person, and I want to see what their next step is going to be. Whatever your next step is going to be, make sure it's the best step, because that person is behind you hanging on the thread. They need that.
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin. I appreciate everything you said today. Ladies and gentlemen, all his information will be down in descriptions below. Social media, copy a link to Amazon and the Kindle for his books. You need to purchase these books. And also, for what he said earlier, while he was talking about the publication companies, he's not advertising those publication companies. He's just giving an example. So we have to put that out there, because you got rules and guidelines. There's no advertisement for publication companies. Okay, so I had to put that out there. Calvin, I appreciate you coming on, sir. This is one of the best conversations I've ever had. Seriously, especially being from Philly, I love this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on my show, sir.
Thank you, Lou. I appreciate you having me. And, let's do it again sometime. Let's bring up some other topics we can talk about. I'm happy to do it if you would like to have me on. So thank you.
That's what it's all about. Let's talk about with Lou J. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this episode or Let's Talk About with Lou J. Again, people on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button. People on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, hit that notification button. When this comes out, you'll automatically see it. You're going to see this young man. You're going to hear this young man. We'll see you next week. Peace.